podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup! Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Tuesday, July 30th. Thanks, everyone, for watching. I am still in Spain, and this podcast, of course, was pre-recorded, so I can put it out there from Spain. You're watching on YouTube, you're watching on Facebook, and you're watching on Twitter, and it's going to once again be an abbreviated version of the Sick Podcast, as is custom here in the summer months. But we did promise you that we'd bring you the Sick Podcast 5 days a week, 12 months a year, at least until the end of 2024. And in the summer of 2025, we'll have to wait and see. And it's brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. They're a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America. They're driven to be different. It's also brought to you by Bittt. They launched their new Ultra Lager. It's a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the hot summer days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and it's ultra refreshing. And it's also brought to you in part by Playgrounds, world-renowned poker experience with free food and drinks at their cash game tables. A bad beat jackpot that's over $1.1 million and climbing weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service. Why play anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground. And a shout out to Betway, and we'll get to them in just a minute. But without further ado, let's bring in. He's done everything pretty much that there is to do in hockey, so he needs no introduction from that point of view. Pierre McGuire, how are you?
Excellent, Tony. Great to visit with you. I know you're overseas. I'm up north in Mont-Tremblant, Quebec, which is kind of my happy place. So I'm really happy for the month of August and spending time here.
It looks like you have a beautiful place in Mont-Tremblant. That's my kind of place. I could tell just by looking at this shot here. That looks like a pretty nice place, Pierre. Good for you.
You know, Tony, I built this home with 2 other men 25 years ago. It was just 2 other men and myself. And the roof is 36 degrees in pitch, and I couldn't find a roofer to do it. So I actually tied myself to one of the upper beams and did all the roof myself. So I'm really proud of this house, and it's something that I look forward to passing on to my children long after I'm gone.
I'm sure they're going to very much enjoy it, Pierre, and I'm sure Arber Xhekaj is enjoying the 2-year contract that he signed with the Montreal Canadiens earlier today. Canadiens fans were asking for it, Pierre, and they got it. A deal that'll pay him $1.3 million on average is your cap hit. And Pierre, I think that's a pretty respectable deal.
Oh, for both sides, it is. It gives Arber some time to get his feet underneath him and establish himself a little bit more as a more steady NHL player. Marty St. Louis clearly with some tough love last year, and I know you remember this just for the fans when they sent him down in the American Hockey League to do a little bit more study and become a little bit more disciplined. Every team, Tony, in this league, every single team needs a nuclear deterrent. Arber Xhekaj is the nuclear deterrent. So if you have a smaller team, like the Canadiens have more players on the small side than the large size, if you don't have that player that can stabilize a game physically, you're going to have a problem. So they can go in any building now, and Xhekaj is not going to be overrun, and the Canadiens aren't going to be overrun. Plus, you add Michael Pezzetta to the mix. That's even better, and then you're going to get a bigger body in Kirby Dach, who's not an overly physical guy, but he can be. And then you have Josh Anderson. So things are starting to go the way the Canadiens want them to go, and Xhekaj is a good first step.
All right. In an ideal situation, isn't it better for your nuclear deterrent to be a player who plays the forward position? Because should he find himself in the penalty box, there's 11 more forwards. But should Xhekaj do so, there's 5 defensemen. Some of them are probably going to be overused. We know Mike Matheson plays a ton of minutes. Your thoughts?
Well, that's why I've been saying for a long time that I think the Canes are going to go 11-7. I don't think they're going to go with the traditional 12-6. And the reason why I say that is, one, you've got a specialist in Xhekaj who's starting to find his game. And two, you've got a guy that I think will not see the inside of an American Hockey League bus in Lane Hudson. I think he's an NHL player. I think he's going to be a specialist to start as a power play guy. And that's why I think that Xhekaj being the deterrent is not a negative thing for Montreal. It's actually a positive thing. And one of the things when you have a smaller team, you've got to clear the crease down low. And more times than not, center icemen are those guys that have to clear the crease. So Suzuki's not a big guy. Doc is a big guy, but he's not overly physical. Jake Evans is not a huge guy. Christian Dvorak is not a massive guy. So Newhook is not a massive guy. So, you look at the Canadian center ice play, they need that stabilizer in the back end. I think that's where I think it fits in for him in Montreal.
I'm going to try to carefully choose my words over the next 30 seconds here or so, because I know the way social media is. And Tony Marinaro said this. Can you believe it? Oh, he's an idiot. But hear me out for a second.
Yeah.
I agree with you that 11-7 would solve, I think, a lot of issues. And sometimes you have to put a lineup out there that probably isn't maybe the coach's favorite lineup, but maybe plays more towards the strength of his players and what he needs. And so I totally hear what you're saying on Lane Hudson, and I agree with you. I don't think Lane Hudson's going to get those 20-plus minutes that a lot of fans would like to see him to get, not early on anyway. And I think they would be wise to bring him along gradually. So having said all of that, let's be honest as well in saying that coaches usually don't go with 11-7. They like to go with 12-6, and players will tell you that they like that better as well because there's a rhythm going. But let's say they go 11-7. And at one point, you want to throw a defenseman out there on a fourth line. Now, I know you're probably expecting me to say Xhekaj, and I will a little bit later on, but you just brought up Lane Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be crazy, absolutely crazy in a hockey game that's, let's just say in the third period, you're going 11-7. You see a fourth line matchup out there and you say, this could be good for him, and put him out there? Like when I saw him in development camp, he played like a centerman. I'm not saying to convert him to center. I'm saying spotting him a shift or two. I know you get what I'm saying. Would it be crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. Sometimes, and look, I had the privilege, and it was an honor too, to work with a lot of real good players. One of them was Paul Coffey. Paul, much bigger than Lane Hudson, much bigger. Better skater than Lane Hudson. Paul Coffey's one of the top 5 all-time skaters in the history of the league. And I can tell you, the first time I was on the ice with him for practice that I was running, it's a different noise when he goes by you compared to other players. It's different. Everything, the blades into the ice, the velocity, the wind that comes from behind him. It's an amazing thing. Lane Hudson's not there. But Lane Hudson might process the game offensively inside the blue line better than Paul did. Paul was amazing jumping into the rush. He was unbelievable. So I'm just saying, we were in Pittsburgh contemplating playing Paul when we were behind in what we were going to call a rover position. And that the rover was used many, many times back in the 40s and the 50s. And it was Scotty Bowman's idea. It was a brilliant idea. Eventually, Craig Patrick traded Paul in a huge trade that brought back Rick Tocchet and Kjell Samuelsson and Kenny Reggett. And it was Coffey and Mark Recchi going to Philadelphia. But no, you're not wrong at all with what you're saying. I could see the Canadiens doing that when they're behind in a game. Absolutely. Especially if they're, let's say it's third game in 4 nights or, fifth game in 7 nights. And you can see your forwards are tired. There's no reason why you wouldn't think about something like that. I think it's a smart idea by you, Tony.
So we talked about a lot of defensemen that the Canadiens have within the organization, a lot of the prospects. And obviously they all want to play. And if some of them don't play, it might stunt their development. And I take a look at the Canadiens defense and I say, okay, Matheson will play all the time and he'll play a ton. David Savard will play, but I think he's going to get dealt right before the deadline. We'll wait and see what happens there. Gooley's going to play. I think, so that's 3. And then I take a look at the other guys, and there's Xhekaj, there's Struble, there's Harris, there's Barron, there's Hudson, and who knows if some of the players from the Rocket are up there. And I say, okay, you know what? There's probably going to be a rotation here. And one guy misses a game, and then a couple of weeks later, another guy misses a game. Let's see what happens. But if you go 11-7, you don't have to have one of those guys out of the lineup, and it's not going to stunt that player's development because that player won't be playing a lot of minutes, but it enhances their value on the market. Those players won't be missing playing time. Like, I see so many benefits of an 11-7. And yesterday I had Eric Engels on of Sportsnet at sportsnet.ca. And I said to Eric, I said, could you see Xhekaj on a 4th line every now and then? Let's just say the Canadiens play 11-7, but they want to get into a rhythm where they're actually doing 12-6, that they take Xhekaj and put him on the 4th line. He dismissed it right away. He didn't like the idea. But at the same time, we talked about so many guys who have done it. Brent Burns did it. Dustin Byfuglien did it. Heck, I remember when the Canadiens played the Pittsburgh Penguins in the series back in the late 90s. I think Alain Vigneault and Dave King did it with Zarley Zalapsky. Remember that?
I do. I was calling the games.
Yeah.
So I do. So I'll take you back, and Mario Tremblay will remember this. Back in the day when the Canadiens were, winning Stanley Cups, they had a guy named Rick Chartrand. And Rick Chartrand would play defense, and sometimes he'd play forward if they were looking to stabilize. He did the same thing with Jimmy Roberts. Jimmy Roberts would play the wing sometimes, and other times he'd play defense. So there was a mobility within their group in Montreal back in the day when they were super elite, that they had players that actually did that, and it wasn't a problem. I remember when the Canadiens played 3 defensemen on the penalty kill. It was Lapointe, Savard, and Robinson. Just on a penalty kill, and sometimes
Scotty Bowman.
Sometimes Serge would take faceoffs. So I mean, to pigeonhole players is wrong. Creative coaching matters more than pigeonholing players. It really does. Yeah. And I love what you said. I think it's spot on. No disrespect meant to anybody else's opinion, but I could see it in games. Let's say you're going to Toronto. Let's just say you're going in Toronto and you're in February, and Ryan Reeves starts to run around. How are you going to stabilize them? The one guy that's going to do it is going to be Arber Xhekaj. It's not going to be anybody else, not at this point. But I think if there's one player that's going to upset the apple cart and change the dynamic on their defense, it's going to be Logan Mailloux. What happens if he makes the team? Somebody's going to be the odd man out coming out of camp. I don't think Reinbacker's making the team this year. I think he's going to Laval.
I totally agree with you there. And I know Francis Bouillon was on record as saying that the prospect in Laval that's the closest to making the National Hockey League is Logan Mailloux. Now, he said that before Lane Hudson was recalled in the final 2 games of the season. But once again, Pierre, we've talked about this before. For their development, Logan Mailloux skipped a year of junior hockey, or almost. Logan Mailloux was with the Laval Rocket last year. So many great organizations, the Detroit Red Wings being one of them, had, basically a rule of thumb that 3 years in the American Hockey League or a total of 250 games if you're not a phenom. PK Subban played a full season of American Hockey League and then got the... Don't you think it's best for Mailloux? And I go back to what so many people have told me, is that you can't burn a player by keeping him 1 extra year of junior or 1 extra year of American Hockey League, but you can burn him by bringing him up too early. Wouldn't it be best for Mailloux to still maybe see the picture that I have in my head? The scenario I've painted is right-handed defenseman, David Savard, right-handed defenseman. Savard takes you up until trade deadline. They probably trade him on that day or a week or 2 or 3 weeks before, and then Mailloux gets recalled.
I think it's fair. What you're saying is fair. Another thing is, do they play Gooley on the right side or the left side? Because I think they're trying to create minutes for other players. And Gooley's one of the few guys I think that can play. Well, I know he can play either side. So it's something to think about. But no, you're not wrong on anything you just talked about. To me, the Canes are in a good position on defense. They're in a real good position. I think they're in a real good position in goal, just knowing what's coming down the road in Jacob Fowler. And the fact that they have established players, especially Montembeault and Primo, that are signed players. So they're in a real good position with their goaltending as well. To me, going forward, with their forwards, especially after this draft this summer from Vegas, Demidov's going to be a real special player. It's just that, they're not going to rush him, and he can't be rushed, so it doesn't matter. I think Canadians are really doing a good job. I really do. I'm really. This is the most encouraged I've been about the Montreal Canadiens in a real long time, Tony.
You brought up the 11-7 a couple of times, and I want to get back to it because I absolutely think not only do I love it, I think it's just so necessary with the players they have. Once again, you want Barron to play or Harris to play. You want Struble to play. You want Xhekaj to play. You want Hudson to play. You want Savard to play. You want Matheson to play. You want to have that deterrent in Xhekaj like you talked about. You want to bring Lane Hudson around gradually. Maybe you want to spot him on the power play and make him somewhat of a specialist like Michel Bergeron used to do with the Quebec Nordiques. And I think it was number 15 at the time, Jean-François Sauvé. I could be wrong on the number, by the way. But there's also another thing that we haven't talked about yet. Even though Michael Matheson can skate like the wind, and actually he doesn't even skate, he glides. I don't think there's really been a reason for Matheson to be as used as he has been in a couple of years here of a rebuild. Here's a player who might be able to play until his mid-30s, maybe late 30s, because he's such an effortless skater. But if you can preserve Matheson, why not? And I think if you go 7, you can preserve him. His 27 minutes might go down to 21 and a half, 22.
Yeah. That'd be good, actually. I talked about it last year with our good friend Mitch Melnick numerous times, and I'm a big Michael Matheson fan. I've known him a long time as a player and as a person. I thought Michael was playing too much last year. I said it at the time, at the start of the year. And I thought eventually it would catch up with him, and I thought it did at the tail end of the season. There were just a lot of gaffes, and it wasn't because he's not a good player. Those gaffes were because he was mentally and physically worn out. I don't think he's going to have the pressure of running the number 1 power play this year, Tony. I just don't think so. That's going to take a lot off his plate. I think eventually we'll find out that it'll be Lane Hudson, which will be great for Lane. It'll be really good for Michael. But I love what you just said about that as well with Matheson, because I do think the Canes are going to play meaningful games at the tail end of March. And because of that, that means they're going to be in a playoff hunt. And if they're in a playoff hunt, who knows? They could make it. And if you do get in that hunt, you need your top guys to be invigorated. And Michael's one of their top guys.
The whole Matheson discussion in the minutes reminds me of when Markov was playing with the Canadiens. And I think Markov, he was probably in his mid-30s, 35, 36. Of course, we know he had 2, not 1, but 2 ACL surgeries almost like within a year apart or whatever it was. It was back to back. And Marc Bergevin, the then GM at the time, I remembered him saying like, well, we have to try and preserve him. And then I would look at the game sheet and I'd see Markov play 27, 28 at 29. And at one point I said to Bergevin, I said, Mark, you talk about preserving Markov, but here you are, he played 26, 27, 28, 25, 29, and we're going through a 4 games in 6 nights or 5 games in 9 nights. I said, how do you feel about this? I mean, you're going to end up burning the guy out. And he said, Tony, in an ideal world, we'd like to get Markov's minutes down. We all talk about it. But when you're a coach and you're behind the bench, you want to win that game. You worry about winning that game first, and you worry about all the other stuff after. And that's why the coach was always going to Markov. That's what he said to me at the time. You think that's what's happening with Matheson? Because, like, Marty St. Louis is a competitor. He wants to win games, but, I mean, even though he wants to, you have to think that even he must know that even if he plays Matheson 25, 26, 27, 28, they don't have the team to make the playoffs.
No, first of all, it's too many minutes, and you're going to hurt the player long term, which happened last year. They don't mean to do that. So one of the ways of alleviating that is creating straight matchups. And you can do that through film study and play players against other teams' players in terms of how they match up athletically, not physically, athletically. There's a big difference. And so that was something that I know Scotty was a big proponent of. He taught me the art of doing that. And it does preserve players. There's no question. We could play a guy like Ulfie Samuelsson in a playoff game, 25 to 28 minutes in a matchup, because he'd be playing in the right matchup. He wouldn't be playing against super speedy guys. He'd be playing against more physical, robust guys that fit more into his profile. You know, we could play Larry Murphy against different guys because we knew we could insulate him with a left wing lock. There are a lot of different things that we could do. And I think that's one of the things where the Canadiens coaching staff can be a little bit more creative. I think they've done some really good things so far, but I think now bench manipulation is going to become more and more apparent with this team, Tony, in terms of understanding how to utilize players, how to gauge players' minutes, and how to keep players invigorated for longer stretches of time over the course of an 82-game schedule.
So, Pierre, let's get back to Arber Xhekaj, who signed that 2-year deal earlier today at $1.3 million per season. Can he beat the Canadiens what Lyle Owen was to a Stanley Cup winning team back in 1993, one of 6 defensemen on a team that one day can win the Stanley Cup? Or would you see him more when they become that good of a team, if they do, more of a depth defenseman, more of a 7? Is he more offensive than Lyle Owen? We know he can shoot the puck, pretty heavy shot. What's his ceiling?
He can't pass the puck as well as Odie, though. Lyle could really move the puck. He was a great first passer deep in his own zone. You know, whether I was in Pittsburgh, whether I was in Hartford, whether I was in Ottawa coaching, the one thing about Odeline, when you were drawing up game plans, you knew that he was an elite first pass defenseman. And he was very underrated on that, extremely underrated. I still think he has a record for most points by a Montreal Canadiens defenseman in a game, and that was against my Hartford Whaler team. And I can tell you right now, Lyle was really a respected player in the league because he was fearless. You know, he's one of those guys that came out of Moose Jaw in the Western Hockey League and absolutely fearless. You look at some of the guys that came off that team, whether it was Mike Keane or whether it was Jimmy McKenzie or Lyle Odeline, like they had some fearsome guys playing junior hockey. And Lyle was one of them. There's no question. But do I think Xhekaj can be as good offensively or as good defensively? This is going to be a big year to judge on that. What I do think he can provide, probably a little better than Odie, is the physical side of it. You know, the stable. Lyle was tough, but he wasn't feared, if you know what I mean, Tony. I think this guy can be feared, and there's a big difference because that gives you a little bit more room.
A shout out to Betway, leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go on Betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 years old and play responsibly. You talked about 7 defensemen. Let's just say they stick with 6. Let's just say. And let's just say Lane Hutson is one of them. In the 2 games that he played last year at the end of the season, they paired Hutson with Savard. With all due respect to Savard, though, if I'm an opposing player, I know that Hutson likes to have the puck on his stick. I know he likes to handle the puck. I know that he likes to create offense. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try and hit him. He's a small guy. I'm going to try and intimidate him. I'll take it a step further. I'm going to try and hurt him. With all due respect to David Savard, I'm not going to shy away from doing any of those things. Should the Canadiens consider, if they play 6, to pair Hutson with Xhekaj? And if so, is Xhekaj good enough to play the offside? Because I wouldn't want to put too much on a young player's plate by asking Hutson to do that.
I haven't seen that side of his game yet. I'll have to study that, Tony. It's a very fair question. If you asked me, if I were game planning against Lane Hutson in particular, a lot of people, put the puck in the corner, make him go back and get it. I wouldn't do that because he's good. He's got real good 2-step acceleration. He's got escapability that a lot of players in the league don't have. And you'll see it this year as we go along. I would do short side shoot-ins. So I'd make him get the puck by the hash mark, not down by the icing line. Make him go get it at the hash mark. And if everybody knows and they're all on the same page, he's going to have a tough time escaping from there because he's going to get enveloped. He's going to have pressure from the strong side coming up the right boards for the forechecking team, the left boards for the Canes, and he's going to get pressure from the inside. That's a tough thing to escape at the NHL level. But if you put it in a corner, it gives him more time to make plays because he's going to win the race to the puck. So that's the one thing, if I were the Canes, I'd be watching for early in the year when he's on the ice, because people watched how good he was at BU. People watched him in the World Junior. They know how good he is, and they know his athletic strengths and his weaknesses.
All right,
And
I'm just curious.
You got to be careful with that. You got to be really careful with that.
I'm just curious with one thing, and this, I'm so happy that I'm talking to you today because with all the coaching experience that you have, when a player has that kind of ability, why would you want to put the puck on his side to begin with? Why don't you want to put the puck towards the other defenseman? And is the answer that if you go in and forecheck that defenseman and he's able to get the puck to the other side to a guy like Hudson, then it opens up all kinds of space for Hudson that probably you don't want. Is that the answer?
That's part of the answer. So one of the things you talk about a lot in team meetings, don't let star players get comfortable. So if a star player's got a lot of time and space to make plays, he gets more and more comfortable during the game. But you can plant the seed of doubt early that it's going to be a long night and he's going to be up against the glass a lot of nights or a lot of time in that night. That's what you want, because a player's not going to be nearly as comfortable. He's not going to freewheel as much, and he's going to know he's going to be frustrated at a certain point in the game, and that's what you want. You want star players to get frustrated. You don't want them getting mad. You want them getting frustrated, and so that's why. But I would say your proposal is actually, I've seen it done both ways, but again, the short side shooting on elite players, you can really take them out of rhythm. If you really want to see a perfect example of it, go watch what teams try to do to Cale Makar in Colorado, because there's an example. When they don't do that and he can wind it up, he's good. But if they short side shooting on him, he has a tough time getting involved in the game.
All right, okay. You brought up Mayu's name,
Yep.
and I could sense that you're high on the player. Let's say he starts in Montreal, and let's say they go 6. More often than not, coaches want a young player to be paired with a veteran so the veteran can show them the way. We've seen coaches, though, put 2 young players together on a third duo, for example, and limit their minutes. Can Mayu be a partner for Hudson? If not now, eventually down the road? We're talking about a big horse who plays the right side.
The answer is yes. I believe he can be. Again, I got to tell you right now, he had obviously a major foible when he was younger in his life, away from the rink. And I think, he's paid a pretty significant toll for that. And will continue to pay, because people will always wonder about him. So that question's always going to be there, and justifiably so, I think. But do I think athletically he can play with a player like Hudson? The answer is yes, I do. I really do. And that's where I think the Canadians see it. That's why I think they're really optimistic with what they're doing. They've got mobility, they've got size, they've got skill, they've got great peripheral vision, and they've got awesome puck movers. Makes a big thing. You look at Gooley, you look at Mayu, you look at Reinbacher, and you look at Lane Hudson. I didn't even talk about Michael Matheson. I didn't talk about Jordan Harris. I didn't talk about Jayden Struble. I didn't talk about David Savard. Didn't talk about any of those guys. You look at the depth that they have organizationally on defense, it's impressive. And it's all athletic, it's all fast, and it's all skillful.
So if you are one of those guys, if you're a Harris or a Barron or a Struble, and you take a look and you notice earlier today that Arber Xhekaj signs a 2-year deal at $2.6 million, I don't think it surprised anyone that he was signing. I mean, what are they going to do? Let him walk? No, they're not going to do that. But What are you thinking? What are you thinking if you're one of the other players on this team that it's just so stacked with 20 prospects?
Yeah, Harris is a different player than what Xhekaj brings. He is. But Struble's not. You haven't really seen the Struble that I know. He's been good and he's been on his best behavior, but you haven't seen the physically mean, nasty, almost crazed Jayden Struble. He's a tough kid, Tony. I watched him a lot. I watched him play prep school. I watched him play summer leagues, and I watched him play at Northeastern. He's a tough kid. And he's got a value in the National Hockey League, especially now. People don't talk about this enough. You know, the Metropolitan Division in the Eastern Conference is kind of down. The best division right now in all of hockey is the Atlantic. And Montreal's in the Atlantic. So if you watch every game Montreal plays, it's a rival. Ottawa's a rival. Toronto's a rival. Boston's a massive rival. Tampa's become a huge rival. Florida's obviously a big rival. You look at their division, it's savage. It's hard. Buffalo's getting better. Detroit. I mean, that division is not a friendly neighborhood, and you need to have guys like Jayden Struble. You need to have guys like Arber Xhekaj. If you don't have those guys, you're going to have a tough time winning. And that's why I think last year Detroit had a tough time winning with consistency. Buffalo had a hard time winning with consistency. And Ottawa had a tough time winning with consistency. They didn't have enough physicality on the back end with any one of those three teams. Not one of those three teams had enough physicality.
Yeah. We know we've heard how tough Struble is. We've seen a couple of examples, but he's a young player in a men's league, right? Sometimes it takes 3-4 years for that player to come into their own and say, okay, I'm ready to take over now. I'm ready to take my physicality to another level.
The best thing that happened for Jayden Struble is Kent Hughes, who knows his body of work as well or better than anybody because his kids played with him at St. Sebastian's and also at Northeastern, and Jeff Gorton, who's spent a lot of time scouting the New England prep schools and knows Jayden Struble really well. They know how to get him to the next level as a management team. A lot of guys draft players, and they're not nearly familiar enough with the players they draft. Montreal, they knew, those two gentlemen in particular, they know exactly what Jayden Struble needs. And they didn't draft him. They didn't draft that player. Mark Bergevin's staff drafted that player, but they know that player unbelievably well.
Yeah. Pierre, I say this all the time. It's been a lot of fun. I know a lot of people watching right now know a lot more about Arber Xhekaj, the Canadiens prospects, the Canadiens defense, what it's going to look like. The 11-7, I think is very interesting. I can't wait to keep my eye on that. Thanks so much for doing this, Pierre. Have a great rest of the day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Appreciate it. Travel well.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Once again, special thanks to Energy Transportation Group. Special thanks to Bittt to Tibi. Special thanks to Playground. And special thanks to Betway. Special thanks to all of you watching. Once again, yes, I am still in Spain. This was recorded a little bit earlier in the day. Thanks for being there watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Comment sick if you like it. Share it with your friends. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love for Shane Gaumont, Master Control. I'll be back tomorrow night. Same time, same place. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TB. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.